had a new hairdo.
Yes, I cut my hair shorter.
I like it. Cute.
Every time I say I'm going to grow it out, I don't. I'm like, you know
I
what?
know.
It
The
gets to
short
here.
hair's cute though. I like it.
Thank you. So being that I don't really know much about your background other than the fact that you're incredible with the camera and that you have the photography studio, like tell me a little bit more about you and where you started in your career.
Oh, we don't have that long, do we? Okay, so I left home and school. Well, I left home about 15 and school at 16 in England. And at that time, life was quite difficult, but I just had to go to work. So my first jobs, I had lots of different jobs. I started working when I was about 12, but my first professional job, if you like, is I worked for a newspaper. I did have aspirations to be a journalist. I love to write too. But without parents, that are around and higher education, that wasn't a thing for me. So I just went into the workforce and I worked in sales and marketing. And I really worked my way up pretty quickly, actually. I did well at school, I was academic, but eventually in the sales and marketing track, I'm jumping. I ended up in, I worked in advertising and, corporate companies in London. And so, I was around the entertainment industry and I kind of enjoyed that. And yeah, sales and marketing was not a passion for me, but it was a way of me earning money without, official qualifications. And I worked for medical companies and computer companies and whatever, but I eventually found myself in radio and advertising. And then I remarried actually, and in my early 20s, I was a mum too by the time I was 20. And I remarried and we went off and ran a golf club. And then that's what he did. And so I started working there too as a sales and marketing manager and running all the events. Had another baby and I'm like, oh my God, this is a lot. And, childcare and all that stuff. And this is ironic. But I decided to work for myself and I set up an events company. And because I was running all these events for other people, but if I left the full-time job and run events for myself, I could do it in my own time in an ideal world. And anyway, so I did that and I trained as a florist and, I'm pretty old. So, I fitted all these things in. And so I trained as a florist and then within a year, I actually opened a really beautiful old florist shop. And I bought a going concern. And so that was really successful. So I was running an events. I had 2 properties. I had 7 staff. I was the youngest person amongst all the staff. I was like 7 and then 28. And then we did movie sets and fancy hotels and celebrity houses and all these things. It was super, super, super hard work. And I loved it and I loved the shop. And we had this listed building in Lethe, Berkshire in England, by the river and Thames, all the things you see in like movies like The Holiday, that's where it was. And that's what it looked like. And but it was successful and I was super busy. And then child number 3 come along. And I was like, I can't do this. I was getting up 4 a.m. 3 days a week to go to market. Wow. I had 3 children under 10. And so I sold the business. And then after I sold the business, I was working back with my husband again, working the golf club, running their property and doing their short-term lets. And I just took myself to college to do photography at night school when my youngest was a year old. I had no intention of becoming a photographer. For me, photographers, I had them on quite a high pedestal. And even then, when I started, it was still very male dominated. We're talking 2000, about 2006. I really got into it. But there was lots of men. I mean, it was a bit more commercial. Digital was starting to happen. Although I learned film photography.
Okay.
So I just went to the college for a year at night school just for something to do, and it was film and developing and all that stuff. But yeah, digital cameras were around and they were just coming into force. So when the kids were kind of small, my husband bought me a digital camera, Nikon, and I've been Nikon ever since. and I threw myself into that. My sales and marketing background, really made it successful quite quickly. Had
Mhm.
no intention of being paid to do it. I think I shot my first wedding in 2008. So that's
Okay.
like really, really, that didn't sound very brief, but I swear to God, I've cut out about 50 careers I had in between.
Right. So when you got into photography, were you working in something else? Like, did you start part-time in it?
Um, I was, yeah. Well, my husband's club. There were 20 odd apartments, really high end luxury apartments.
Mhm.
So whilst being a mum, I was also refurbishing and furnishing these apartments and running the lets. So we had like, sports stars and whatever come in and stay. So I was doing that for the short term lets and just running that. But that was kind of running that with a baby on my hip kind of thing.
Okay.
And it didn't require lots of administration. I wasn't sat at a desk. I wasn't running a computer. I was just running around and servicing everyone's needs. And we lived on the venue too. We had a house at the golf club. So yeah, I was kind of doing that and being a mum. And then we left the golf club and bought our own house and with the kids. So yeah, I become a photographer. Really, it seemed to me that if I got a corporate job and I was being paid, I was actually giving my money to childcare. And
Right.
as a mum, and everyone will tell you, the moment you put your kids into childcare, kids are getting sick, you're still paying for childcare. I think
Mhm.
my nanny at one point was earning more money than me. And it just
Wow.
seemed, yeah, it just seemed ridiculous. So I just decided to launch my company. I mean, I still have my company. I still have my events company, so the business name. So I just kind of moved over into photography. And when you have children in school, by then my daughter was in primary school and I had one in secondary school, but really he was kind of moving up out into secondary school. So I focused in on the little ones. I started doing school photos and I marketed myself through that. And it didn't take long. I mean, the school networks, it blows you up. So
Right.
yeah.
Gotcha. So, like, a big reason I wanted to have you on is because I feel like, and we talked about this a little bit, I feel like so many people have some sort of craft and art, whether they know about it or not, and it always stays a side hustle. It never really turns into anything, whether that be because, like, those inadequate feelings, it's competitive, it's saturated, or they think it can't really provide enough to quit their day job or their full time job. So, what kind of made you want to leap into that? I guess kind of it's the fear of the unknown, right? Like it's and almost like the same. I do hair as my full-time job, and that's something that it's not when times get tough, it's the kind of artistic industries aren't the type of thing that um stay high in demand. So I think that fear of it may not be consistent or whatever. So what made you decide to take that leap, like be all in, and what kind of mindset did you have that made you decide to do that despite
Well,
the fear?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for, like 18 years. And
Mhm.
I think this is going to sound kind of ridiculous, really. There's not much that scares me anymore because all of the scary things that could possibly ever happen to me happened to me when I was very young. So my biggest fear is not doing all the things. And my biggest fear is not doing all the things that I want to do and not being self sufficient. And I think that when you come from a place where I've come from, and I don't mean the country, when you come from this kind of environment, you have a fear of failure. So I still feel like I haven't quite done the thing that I want to do, and whether
Mhm.
or not that involves a camera, I'm not sure. But in terms of the business, yes, I had a husband and we had a mortgage and everything. I want people to know that I was never kept. I mean, obviously he would support his family, but it was important that we both earned money. And
Mhm.
life has changed for us since I moved to America, and I have different pressures now. I have kids in very expensive schools in America because England, we don't pay for that like you do over here.
Right.
But so I still have to, I still want to contribute towards that. But this is my mindset. Okay, so initially I had children, I'm paying for childcare. and I also need to earn money. But if I went to work, the money's going on the childcare. Working for myself, I didn't have the childcare costs, and I could work around my kids. So I used to set goals all the time. And the first few years of my business, I paid for the fun stuff. So as a photographer, you know, it wasn't like I was earning. When you're self-employed, you're not earning like a salary, like you expect to take a paycheck home every month. So you could have a really great month, and then you could have a quiet month, whatever. But I set myself goals. I think my sales and marketing background really helped me with that. And what it is for me in terms of setting financial goals is I want to earn this much money this year. In order to earn this much money this year, but I can only work these amount of days. I would say, how much is that money? How many days have I got available to work in a month? I would break that down. That's how much money I need to earn every day or every week. And how can I earn that money? Initially going into schools, I did school photography, I did babies, I did newborns, I did families. I would work all day on a weekend. And so I think, and I'll say this for anyone out there, I don't see problems, I see solutions. I feel like if you can get up and walk and talk and do all the things, then there are ways around the hurdles that you create for yourself. And I think when people say, oh, I can't give this up because I've got all these things to do, I say, well, you're never going to get to do these things if you don't give this up. You really have to set your mind to going out to do it. Of course, if you have a mortgage and you've got rent, you need to cover those things. But I truly believe you have to step off the cliff in order for those things to come and for it to take itself on. You will not consider you're a professional in your field if you are not fully committed to being a professional in your field.
Right.
And
Yeah, because it's much better to introduce yourself as, when someone asks you, what do you do? As opposed to saying, I'm a banker full time, but I do photography on the side, or I paint on the side, like
yeah.
if that's something, then that's not how people see you, I suppose. And then it starts to become an identity problem of like,
No,
that's,
yeah.
what you want to be. And yet somehow it always gets put second, even in my introductions when people ask me what I do, and I think that has a lot to do with, I guess the ego side of it, but in the best way, like the identity side of it, of not almost feeling like an imposter, like I
mean,
do it, but I don't do it all the way.
The saying that I'm a photographer always felt a little bit, I don't know, I won't use any English swear words. It always just felt a little bit stupid, but I always felt a little bit poncy about it. I felt like, oh my God, that's a terrible thing to say. Like, my kids now actually joke and say that I can get that I'm a photographer in the first 30 seconds of any sentence. But when I meet anyone, strangers, whatever, they tease me about it. They're like counting down fingers before I mention it. But I actually don't think it matters how other people see you and what they think that you are. The only person, of course, when people are looking at my work, I care what they think, but the only person that really should care about who you are and how you see yourself is you. And who cares what your label is, and who cares that you have 10 different, strings to your bow. You can do what you do, Sarah, and you can also be that other thing, and you can be that other thing, and that's okay. And I think it's more okay now in today's society than it ever was. I think that people care too much about it. When you get up every day, care more about what you've got to do in that day than what name tag you're wearing. Right. Because I think that we're just people that are capable of doing so many things. So but all I feel is that if you truly want to start in a vocation and you want to go off and be in that career, you have to fully immerse yourself in that career in order for you to have the confidence to put yourself forward to do it. That's it. And and just living and breathing it will make it happen. I saw Jenna was it Jenna Kutcher? What's her name? I forget her name. She's a big Instagrammer or whatever, and she's got a reel out today, and it says, in order to be the thing that you want to be, you have to, live and walk and live, breathe that thing that you want to be. It's almost like it's not there yet, but you have to step in those shoes and be that identity. So, I mean, if that helps you. For me, I don't think it was everything.
Mhm.
I feel like it wasn't that I got up one day and today I'm a photographer. I'm still growing, I'm still learning, and I'm still achieving, and I'm still working on that. I'm just getting
Mhm.
up every day and doing the work. That's it. Period.
Right. I
Mm.
love that. So you also own a photography studio, which
Well, I
I
don't own
love
the
that part.
building, but yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, you
You have
run
to
it,
see.
right? It's
Yeah, yeah,
yours.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So how did that come about? Was that something that you're like, I just need a place to shoot, and then we're like, you know what, let me rent it out and let other people do their craft here,
Mm.
or
Well, I mean, it's the renting out bit is pretty new.
Mhm.
And that wasn't the intention. But I had studios before. I had studios in England, and I also built a studio at our house. Small and humble place it was, but really lovely, and I'm
Mhm.
proud of that. And actually, that was my first big expense in my business. And that being said, and I want to address this because obviously a lot of young people come to me, or new big photographers, or people starting out in business. Every single penny that's gone into my business came from my business. When I see people post, oh, I want to go and shoot weddings, but I don't have this lens or this lens, whatever, you can rent those things. And I say to people, whatever job's coming up, that job will pay for the next piece of equipment you need or whatever. And that's how it worked with me. I always used to see my income not just as money in my pocket, but an investment into my business for the next thing that I needed. So I actually, for the only time, I borrowed the money to build that studio from my father-in-law, actually. And I paid him back. And I paid him back so well, I overpaid him. And he didn't tell me. But then I noticed when I got to my accounts, I was like, hang on, you owe me some money back. I overpaid you. But we paid it over a period of time. But so I had studios there. Then we moved to America, and for 3 years I couldn't work here. I didn't have the paperwork. Now I have a green card and a visa, and a green card, so I can. And in those 3 years I worked abroad. And then in 2019 I got my green card. Of course, we all know what happened 6 months later. COVID happened. So people already knew who I was and what I did. I did a lot of projects in America, documentary projects, so they knew I was a photographer. So I was known enough. But then 2 years or so at home and just feeling a little bit suffocated, I was like, I was started looking for a studio. But we'd bought our house for it to be a studio. I have a whole floor in my house that was my studio. And but I needed to get out of the house. And then one day I went downtown. Somebody I know mentioned these live workspaces, and I'd seen another photographer in Austin with a live workspace, and I didn't know what that was, but basically it is a retail unit, but I actually could live in it if I wanted to. But it's street level with a shop front and everything. Well, you've been there.
Mhm.
So not what you'd expect to be a live work. It's got it, but yeah, I could live in it. But I walked in, it was brand new, no one had ever been in it. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's mine. And I hadn't even had a conversation with my husband. And
Wow.
it was twice as much money as I thought I'd ever spend or could spend. There's
Mhm.
nothing like a big fat rent due at the end of a month to drive your business. Let me tell you, I probably had 3 months rent in the bank with the day I walked in and I signed the lease. I did, and then by the time I got home, the deal was done, and I said, oh, by the way, I get emotional about it because it was that kind of reaction. I just said to my husband,
Yeah.
"Look, I've done this thing." And I was like, I saw this studio today and I just took it on. I was like this. And he was like, oh, he didn't even say a word. He didn't go, because he's so sensible and conservative. And he's a man
Right.
that, he tries to rein me in. It doesn't probably work. But yeah, so, sorry. And I didn't
No,
know
don't be sorry.
about that. But yeah, he said, great, right, what do I need to do? And he just had to countersign for me. But yeah, I took it on and it was so exciting. And I needed to be around new people and different people and be in downtown and be around diverse audience and just young professionals and just people that go to work every day. And that's not where I
Mhm.
lived. And but yeah, the hustle is real. And I like to keep my bank balance at a certain place. So I've got a little bit of a buffer zone. But
Mhm.
let me tell you, the moment I took on my studio, the moment I started working, in that first year, I quadrupled my business financially.
Wow.
It's kind of it makes you go. It
Mhm.
makes it happen just this year. So I've just signed my 3rd year lease. So I've been there in
Okay.
over 2 years. And last year I had a quieter year personally, a little bit demotivated. It kind of happens. Nothing to do with the business, just me, 100% me personally. So I wasn't pushing it as hard. And I've come back into, well, I say come back into this year at the end of the year now, but I've come back with a new energy. But I just signed another 15 months on my lease. And I just thought, you know what, I have this really lovely space. I don't work on a weekend mostly. And I'm not there every day. So now we're starting to allow other people to come in and use the space hourly,
Right.
whatever. But that's it.
I
Yeah.
love that. Wow. So what do you is that where you do most shoots, like, if it's something like headshots, that type of thing? Is that, like, the main reason why you got the space was just for you doing work there?
Well, I photograph women a lot, and so I did a project in the first year, 40 women over 40, and so I needed that space. Well, you know, we design big sets for people and we create
Okay.
that space. I've always been a person that was out on the road shooting and environmental portraiture, which I still love. But we're in Florida, let's be honest. Florida's hot
Right.
and there's gators in the lakes and there's all these things. So and hotels just aren't big enough to have hair and makeup, and I'd need 2 rooms and all these things. So, and, you know, it's just for convenience. I still get inspired by going out and shooting elsewhere. You know, I'm in Pittsburgh right now. I shoot up here. I rent studios elsewhere. I literally I've been all over this country, and I
Mhm.
drive. You know, I drive all around the country shooting. So I feel like I have best of both worlds. It's nice to come home and have a workplace, and the studio's done that for me. The reason we have it so beautifully done inside and I create all these nice environments in the studio is because when you come and rent it for an hour or two, you don't have time to do what I do, like, you know, create a whole big situation.
Right.
So I'm trying to create situations so that the average photographer can just walk in and use it. But yeah, you know, my pop-up shops, my pop-up headshot clinics and whatever. But yeah, I still shoot everywhere. We pick up the studio and we go off. You do get to a certain time in your life and your career and whatever where that gets old, like carting a full studio
Mhm.
around in your car. So it's much nicer for me to say to people, "Oh yeah, you can come to me." And
Right.
yeah, I have a fridge full of prosecco. Come to my place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's nice to have the luxury to do both and give yourself the
absolutely.
option where you're not stuck just doing the travel thing or stuck just in one location. You have the luxury of choice, you know?
Yeah, and you know that choice might change for me down the road. You know, at the end of this lease, you know, I turned 50 in December, which is
Mhm.
terrifying. But in a year from now, the studio might be a burden that I don't need. And I'm not saying
Mhm.
it's a burden right now, but financially, absolutely. And I'm still evolving. So we'll
Mhm.
see.
Right. I love that. So, I guess, to kind of start wrapping up a little bit, what is a piece of advice you would give to any form of artist, whether it's photography or painting or just any sort of craft that you have to work on daily to develop and to take it on and be in it full time? What would you say to any artist who isn't working full time in pursuance of that art? What's maybe a piece of advice you would give them to kind of for a little bit of a push?
Yeah. I mean, I think in any kind of art or craft or, you know, creativity or, I mean, you know, I've always taken photography. I never could consider myself an artist, and I became more of an artist maybe when I came here for the first 3 years of being here, not being able to work. I did artistic pursuits projects with photography, and people started to call me an artist, and I felt like such a like imposter. But I think doing projects and doing things not for money in your craft is really good for you to grow and develop your talent, and also to keep you stimulated in what you do. The other thing I would say to people is keep educating yourself, keep growing. I probably invest at least $10,000 a year in training still,
Mhm.
whether that be online courses, going to conferences, you know, just keep growing because it keeps changing, keep evolving. And if you're in it to grow your business, you cannot just sit at home behind your four walls, do what you do, and not tell anyone about it. It's so easy to just disappear into your shell, and I definitely did that for a
Mhm.
little bit. I had to get out, and I had to go see people. You have to dig deep and find that extrovert within yourself to let people see what you do. And don't be manipulated. Don't let people take advantage of you. But certainly, in the very beginning, giving yourself away for free, for not for exposure, because an abused word right now. But I put myself out there. I put myself in situations where people got to see me. I would show up to an event with my camera, though I didn't know anyone, and I would take pictures. I'd write a blog post, put all the pictures online. Everyone would log in. Everyone would see it. Everyone would share it. Oh my God, all of a sudden, everyone else is paying to be there, and I'm getting free exposure because I just took 3 or 4 hours out of my day to turn up and cover that event.
Mhm.
So, whatever field you're in, whatever artistic talent you have, you know that there's a community for that. The people that also do what you do are not gonna buy from you. Just remember that. You have to put yourself out in communities that appreciate what you do and that need you. So that's where you need to go. But being
Right.
around the communities of people that do what you do is just a nice little comfort family. Not that I have a big family of photographers in, Orlando that I'm around, I don't, but I have a community of people that are entrepreneurs in the events world, women lifting women is really what I'm all about.
Mhm. And you said that you were starting a podcast, right?
Yes, I mean, one thing I can do is talk. That came with my birth. But I have a group called She All I Am Is Me on Facebook, and I started that in 2020, and there's over 2,000 women in that group, and it's all about lifting women and empowering women, and we have that. And when I took on the studio, I started creating She Networks, which is what the podcast will be called. And that was just about having a space, an environment, a community. And actually, the group came from, I wanted a building where there'd be talent in that building, like a collective, and people could come and use the space and provide their services as a collective. But then COVID happened, so the collective was online. And
Mhm.
so for me, the podcast is going to be about people that I've met within my community. And I'm like you, I'm going to get them to come on and talk about what they do. But it will be personal too. My projects have all been about meeting strangers and helping them tell their stories. So if you have a
Right.
story to tell, whether it be personal or business or both, then that's what the podcast will be about. We're recording 10 episodes in November and they'll be going out weekly.
So exciting. I can't wait.
No, I'm looking forward to
I'm
it. I mean,
excited
I'm
for
nervous
you.
now. I've been so busy. I need to get on it.
I
But
know.
I haven't invited
No, it's
everyone that I want on that weekend. But anyway,
right.
yeah, I know. I mean, this is great, and the reason it hasn't started sooner is because sometimes you have to what's the word? I've lost the word, but you have to delegate.
Mhm.
And I've learned and I've got better at delegating all this. I've done this before, but
Mhm.
it's a block for me in order for me to get on and do the next thing. So I've paid a producer to come and create my podcast for me. I just
Yeah.
sit on the couch and talk to people.
Mhm. And from experience, like it's a lot. It's a lot to I've bought so many new microphones, so many new things. Like every time I record a podcast, there's different background noise and I have to figure out how to edit it out. Like it's a whole different art in
It's the
itself. And that's
editing thing.
something that is challenging. It's a barrier to get
Yeah.
involved in things. You just want to show up and do your
Mm.
art and have a conversation and ask the right questions and be in on that without having to do all the other side stuff. So it's a
Mhm.
smart investment to make if that's been a barrier for you, like, oh, I don't
Oh,
want to have to
completely.
edit it myself because
Yeah.
who does, you know?
No, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And with the podcast and the writing, because a lot of my projects are images and words, and so that's my next move really. And if I can get more people in the studio using my space, whether it be podcasts or photographers or events, then I can shoot a little less and work on these projects a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm super excited for you.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for making the time to do this. This has been great. I really appreciate, I remember we were chatting after my photo shoot, and I'm so glad that you asked, well, what was this shoot for? A podcast. And we got to chatting, and I'm glad you asked that question because we wouldn't be here otherwise. So
yeah, and your photographer, it wasn't me, let's put it out there. Your photographer was lovely, and I've been talking to her
yes.
too since.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. We're following each other on Instagram, and I love, and she's new, and she's talked about it, and I think too that I've always avoided it. But I'm going to start doing some education for young photographers because you just don't know what you know. And to be honest, I know quite a lot. So
Yeah.
I want to be that person that says, okay, this is what you need. This is what would be nice to have. And this is a luxury. And this is what you need to do to get yourself moving in that direction. And so I'm chatting with her too, but she looks like she's pretty organized and she knows where she's going. So
Yeah.
hopefully there will be a membership to the studio. I'm going to be doing a monthly membership, so people can rent the space like for 6 hours a month for a reduced rate where they get guaranteed and stuff. So maybe for you, do your podcast.
Yeah.
But that's something that we're going to be doing, and hopefully she'll be one of my members. So that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. She was awesome.
Yeah, she's great. Well, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.